In today's video, we're going over the last of the Havoc Demon Hunter talent builds, the Fellbomb GLAIVE build. Before we begin though, I'd just like to say that a lot of my viewers aren't subscribed, so if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. It won't cost you anything and really helps me out, and I'll have tons of great content throughout Dragonflight and beyond. With that, enjoy the video. So the GLAIVE build. Now this is my last kind of a 3-part video series going over the different Havoc builds for Prepatch for Dragonflight. If you want to check those out, I got one going over the Shadow Destiny build, and one going over the Essence Break Momentum build. But this is the GLAIVE build, the Chucker build, the one where you just throw out a bunch of glaives, do a bunch of damage with those. Honestly, this one's really funny because it's entirely based upon a legendary that exists only because Shadowlands is here. We'll go over that in the legendary section, of course. Before that, we're going to do talents, we're going to do covenants, we're going to do all the jazz you guys know and love to give you guys this build and allow you to just rip some glaives into big packs of enemies and do some crazy damage. Now, before we get into that, this build is kind of an M+ build. It's not really there in the single target department, but it has crazy AOE or funnel right now. It can do really well in raids like Anduin, where you have these intermissions with one ad that takes a lot of damage and a lot of stuff to cleave off of. Honestly, this is kind of perfectly situated for the Anduin fight if you want to do big damage that way. You can do some crazy damage with moats as well if you have that raid affix enabled for that boss. Otherwise, though, this is pretty much just a M+ build. It does better in those dungeons where you don't have as small as pack sizes. You have like big packs, you have lots of packs, and the bosses aren't as impactful because this will just do a lot of damage there. So we'll go to the talents. I'll give you guys a little breakdown of all of them. Start with the class tree. You guys have seen the last few videos, know the class tree by heart now. Nothing really changes too much between each of the builds. They're just all good. We run down the left side to grab Collective Anguish because it works so well with Venthyr and does a lot of damage, especially with any means necessary because it turns into chaos damage. Erratic Felheart is just a great pickup all around. Internal Struggle giving us Mastery is great, especially for this build because, again, any means necessary makes us scale with Mastery quite well. The Hunt and Darkness are our last two picks in the bottom row. Going down to the Hunt is just a very easy, free damage pickup. Demonic is incredibly powerful. If Sinful Brand is ever changed to work with any means necessary before Dragonflight launches, which at this point, I don't think it will be, but if it ever does, you can run first the Illidari. Otherwise, Demonic gives you so much demon uptime with I-Beam, allows you to hit some really powerful and strong death sweeps into packs. Lastly, we could just grab this stuff here to fill up points. It's powerful. We get a stun on a shorter cooldown. We get some magic reduction. This is mandatory. Rush of Chaos gives us shorter metamorphosis. And our stuff up here we're just filling out. Fellblade gives us more fury. We get Charred Warblades, which heals us for all chaos damage as well, because chaos damage is fire damage as well. So important to keep that in mind. We pick up Bouncing Glaives to deal more glaive damage. We grab Master Glaive for 2 glaive charges. And finally, Sigil of Flame. Now this actually ends up doing some damage because we turn it into chaos, but really giving us 30 fury whenever we have nothing else is also very powerful. Onto the class tree here. So it's important to note on the spec tree, that we grab Demon's Blades. The reason here is we just don't have the GCDs anymore to run Demon's Bite. Now, a small benefit here is that any means necessary also turns the passive into chaos damage, so that's dealing more damage, scaling with our mastery. That's a good little added bonus. But really, we just run this so we have GCDs to spend on other buttons. It was also buffed to give us Fury every time it procs, although less Fury, which is much better. You don't go through dry spells anymore. This is a much more consistent Fury generation than it was in the past, and is very passive, allowing us to actually use our GCDs on good abilities. Again, we're grabbing First Blood, Critical Chaos, and Dancing with Fate. These talents are mandatory. They're going to be running every build. In this build, we're grabbing Fellfire Heart and Burning Hatred, as well as Furious Throws. Fellfire Heart, Burning Hatred work together with the Immolation Aura Ragefire package to kind of give us that really strong Immolation Aura every roughly 20 to 24 seconds, depending on your haste level, giving us some nice Fury generation outside of our windows with Tactical Retreat and all that as well. And Fellfire Heart has a pretty big damage gain when combined with Goring Inferno, Burning Wound, and Ragefire, as well as with our Legendary, kind of just giving us more of that Immolation Aura damage. We run down to Chaotic Transformation and Looks Can Kill to just kind of amp the damage of I-Beam. It deals a lot of damage with multiple I-Beams at once, and this also allows us to get pretty high brand extension, even on this build where we don't have Dark Glare Boon, we don't have some of that stuff to get a lot of I-Beams out. We still end up with decent enough uptime from Venthyr and Sinful Brand, and we end up dealing a lot of damage with that anyways. On the left side, we're grabbing Initiative because it's just super powerful if there's any targets that spawn in or in an M+ scenario. Likewise, you can use Vengeful Retreat to refresh it, which combos very well with Tactical Retreat, giving us a 20-second VR, as well as tons of Fury generation over the 10 seconds. Now remember, you do have to hit a target to trigger this Fury generation, so don't just Vengeful Retreat just in open space. Make sure you hit something. Very important to do that. And lastly, we get Unbound Chaos. Again, we're pushing Immolation Aura a lot for Rage Fire and for our Fury generation, so using that free Fel Rush to do a lot of damage is very powerful. Finally, we get down to the bottom here into the bread and butter of the build. We get Soul Rend. Now, this is a spiritual successor to Blood Glut. Basically, whenever you yeet your glaive at a target, it causes them to take 120% of the damage dealt as chaos as a dot over 6 seconds. One thing about this is that it works like Fire Mage Ignite. So if you throw 2 glaives at a target, it'll apply 2 instances of Bloodlet, or Soul Rend, sorry, and stack them together, causing the full damage of both to be dealt. We have Any Means Necessary, which is a great capstone in this. Basically turns all your Arcane, Fire, Frost, Nature, and Shadow damage into Chaos and causes it to be amped by your Mastery. Increases that damage by 56% isn't an additional bonus. You can see that that is just going to be equal to my Mastery percentage, which is 56 at this moment in time. Finally, our last 2 talents, we have Accelerating Blade. Throw Glaive deals 25% increased damage for each enemy hit. Because of the talent Bouncing Glaives, this causes Throw Glaive to hit 3 targets. So the third target is going to take 75% additional damage from your glaive. This is strong. This allows Throw Glaive to actually deal some damage. Without this, Throw Glaive kind of hits like a wet noodle. You're better off just kind of walking up to your target and slapping them with some pasta you have in your pocket. The last talent here, Furious Throws, basically makes Throw Glaive cost Fury, but doubles the glaives you throw out. So every time you push this button, you will throw out 2 glaives, which will hit the same 3 targets, dealing tons of damage with your Bloodlet. Soul Rend. Jeez, it's the same ability. I keep messing up the name. So all in all, this kind of works together to give you that glaive build where you're dealing tons of damage as well with Rage Fire and Immolation Aura. You have your I-beams going, and you have Any Means Necessary buffing a lot of your damage, like your Hunt, like your Collective Anguish, like your Shadow Blades, Demon Blades, and your Immolation Aura. Just doing a lot of chaos, doing a lot of dot damage, a lot of big uncapped AoE in those big packs. Now we're going to talk about Legendaries and really get into the reason why this build works together the way it does. So in terms of Legendaries, obviously you're going to want Unity. Throw on whatever slot you have as your worst slot. But for actual Legendaries, you want to pick yourself up Fel Bombardment. Fel Bombardment is a really cool Legendary that we've never actually played with before and is really just alive because of this short pre-patch window. Basically, whenever Immolation Aura ticks, it has a chance to grant you a stack of Fel Bomb up to 5. Which increases the damage your next Throw Glaive deals to your primary target by 50% and launches an additional glaive at a nearby target. So it can stack up to 5 times, so 250% additional damage to your primary target, and then throws out up to 5 more glaives. This is actually really, really good, and we'll yeet yourself over to this pack here, push Immolation Aura, and you guys can see how fast this will tick up. I'm only hitting 5 targets right now, and it goes up pretty fast. If you have more targets, of course, it'll go up even faster. And then whenever you have these 5 stacks, and you actually throw out your glaive, you can see it throws out a ton of glaives as well, dealing a lot of damage with your glaive and a lot of damage with your Soul Rend dot. This kind of is the bread and butter of the build and the reason why this build can actually exist. This is really, really powerful and really, really fun to play with, so pick this up if you don't have it yet. It's going to be super, super fun in those big AoE keys or in those bosses with tons of AoE pad or funnel that you can do. In terms of Covenants, just play Venthyr. Venthyr is going to be your best in the pre-patch, really just pound for pound. It has very strong Covenants, it has very strong Soulbinds. That's what I meant to say. It also has a really strong ability in Sinful Brand, giving us big single target or big priority with Sinful Brand the ability, and then also giving us big AoE with Metamorphosis every 3 minutes, kind of making Metamorphosis an actual AoE cooldown. In terms of Conduits, basically you want to run this. Now there is an option instead of Adaptive Armor Fragment. You could run Serrated Glaive because of how much glaives you're throwing out. Basically this makes your enemies that get hit by it take more damage from I-Beam. However, realistically, Adaptive Armor Fragment is probably a more consistent option, but you can swap it out for Serrated Glaive if you so wish. The rest of them, you're running Increased Scrutiny and Relentless Onslaught, just for the extra benefit that they give you. Realistically, our other 2 options for Potency Conduits are already in our tree, so they don't stack, so we're not like gaining value from them. So we just run the other 2 options that we have. In terms of Endurance, Fel Defender and Viscous Ink are our best 2. They just give us more damage reduction as well as reducing the cooldown of Blur. And then our only useful finesse is Felfire Haste, so that's the one we grab. You can also run Theotar if you want the Mastery. However, realistically, Soothing Shade can be pretty good, but it's pretty hard to play around, especially because as a Demon Hunter, we use a lot of our movement in our rotation, so that can lead you to not being in the Soothing Shade when you need it to be, but this is also an option if you wish to try this one out. Finally, in terms of rotation, our rotation itself is pretty similar to a lot of the other builds. The only wrinkle now is actually with the glaives and managing your stacks of Fel Bombardment. So if you're opening up on a pack, you can start off with Immolation Aura, then rip the Hunt in, use your proc there, throw on Beam, I-Beam, Death Sweep, VR, and then chuck your glaives once you hit 5 stacks. Then you can meta and carry on with your day. Realistically, if you have all those up, it is going to muddy your rotation a little bit. It's probably a little bit better to throw out your glaives whenever you get your charges. Realistically, with Immolation Aura, though, the only important thing with your glaives, outside of the standard Demon Hunter rotation, is to be sending your glaives whenever you have stacks equal to the number of targets you have. So I have 5 targets, so throw out 5 stacks, as well as to not overcap your glaive charges. As long as you're doing that, as long as you're sending your Fell Bomb charges at 5 stacks in AoE, or 3 stacks against 3 targets, etc., and making sure you don't cap on charges of Throw Glaive, then you're going to be doing fine. Otherwise, just remember to use your Vengeful Retreat on cooldown every 20 seconds. Flip into a wall when you can. Flip into or across a pack so that you can maintain uptime if you can. Otherwise, just use all your buttons on cooldown. Use your I-Beam with Sinful Brand whenever possible. And throw your glaives to make sure they don't cap, or whenever you got 5 stacks of Fell Bomb, or however many stacks are equal to your target count, if that makes sense. So, final rundown: if you're at 2 targets, throw at 2 stacks. If you're at 5 targets, throw at 5 stacks, etc. It's going to stack up pretty quickly, especially in the more target counts. You can see I'm already at 3, and I can just yeet my glaives out, do a ton of damage, rip a glaive on a pack, and it feels really, really good. Realistically, though, not too difficult of a rotation. Try and be in range of targets whenever your Rage Fire erupts, so that you can actually get that damage off. Realistically, Rage Fire won't deal as much as it's doing against these target dummies because you're going to be in a pack scenario. But otherwise, it's pretty easy. Just remember to use your glaives and don't cap them. Also, it's really funny if you throw 5 glaives. I just want to show you guys this. So here's a bunch of targets. I'll throw 5 glaives out. Yeet. A bunch of glaives go flying. So that's it for that rotational guide. It's pretty simple. It's just your bread and butter Demon Hunter, throwing out glaives as well. Nothing has changed too much compared to a lot of the other builds. It's just going to be on your glaive management. Make sure you don't cap, and making sure you use your Immolation Aura and spending your charges of Fell Bombardment. Would recommend getting some weak auras to track how many charges you have, or to track how many glaive charges you have as well, just so you don't waste either of those. So that is the build for today. I will have some videos over the weekend going over non-Demon Hunter stuff. I want to talk about some tank stuff. I want to talk about some specs to try out and pre-patch if you have a chance. I'll be streaming this weekend as well, doing some M+, as well as some Beta M+, so check that out if you want. Link to my Twitch in the description. Give that a follow. Going to try and do that for the Twitch drops that are coming out. Leave any questions or comments you have down below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a sub if you liked it. It would really help me out. And thanks guys for watching the video. I'll catch you guys next time. Yeet your glaives.